This weekend, a conference named Building the Future will take place in Santiago, Chile, hosted by Chile's President Gabriel Boric. It will include Colombia's new president, Gustavo Petro, and representatives of other left-wing parties from Central and South America and the Caribbean. It's being billed as a new discussion forum for the left. However, like most things, there are contradictions. To probe some of those, we spoke with journalists Stephen Sefton in Nicaragua and Camila Escalante in Brazil via Skype on Wednesday. Thank you to you guys first for coming. Camila, Stephen, it's a pleasure to have you.
Yeah, so I'll tell you a little bit about this conference. It's a 3-day conference that's taking place in Santiago, the capital of Chile, and it's being convened by people like Gabriel Boric, the president there, Gustavo Petro, and literally the parties of Petro, Gabriel Boric, and the party of Alberto Fernandez. I don't think these other presidents will be present there, but they will be represented. There's also a party called the PSOL from Brazil that will be represented and is a big part of this. And so they're trying to form, they're in some of the initial stages of the formation of a so-called leftist bloc, a bloc of South American left-wing parties that they say they want to sort of be a new progressive face for the future that would actually be stand in contrast and be an alternative to the Sao Paulo Forum. Sao Paulo Forum being a group of parties that includes all the socialist parties of all of Latin America. And so this new bloc would exclude countries like Venezuela and Venezuela's PSUV, the United Socialist Party. And they say they want to talk about feminism and human rights and the climate. But we also know that these are the countries, these are some of the leaders and where we've seen some of the most criticism of the so-called human rights situations in countries like Venezuela and Nicaragua. And so it really seems that they're trying to form something that deliberately excludes anti-imperialist parties. And it's kind of a collection of parties that have had an orientation that's more favorable and aligned with Washington.
Yeah, and from the point of view of people here in Nicaragua and probably also in Venezuela, and we see this kind of move as an attempt to divide the popular movements, the revolutionary governments that are trying to work together towards integration, and principally through organizations like the CELAC, the Community of Latin American and Caribbean States. But although this is, as you say, it's at the level of political parties, apparently, and obviously the underlying idea is to put distance between themselves and the much more influential and much more solid record of the Sao Paulo Forum, which has been going since 1991, when it was originally set up. And it's as Camila said, it's the forum for all the progressive, radical, revolutionary political parties in the region. So for these essentially social democrat governments to start this initiative is very obviously a means of dividing what should be a united front against the imperialist interventions and influence and the different ways that the United States and its European allies seek to precisely to prevent Latin America from uniting and becoming a solid, integrated regional bloc.
We've seen, back and forth just over the past few years, Xiomara Castro coming back in Honduras after, Mel Zelaya was dragged out in a coup in the early years of the first Obama administration. And as soon as she comes into office, her party turns on her. AMLO in Mexico with contradictions there also in the ingrained ones in Mexican society. The most recent one being him calling yesterday or the day before on the powers that be in the United States to stop picking on Donald Trump. Lula and Bolsonaro, when he was in power, the position that he took in international affairs, sort of moving closer to the BRICS rather than acting as a stalking horse for the United States in that structure and elsewhere. A lot of contradictions. Castillo in Peru and Boric in Chile itself. These are... I mean, we don't have Hugo Chavez. You have Maduro still. You have Canal Diaz and the Cuban Revolution installed, and more or less, it's the institutional power now in Cuba for a long time. The government in Nicaragua, where Daniel Ortega carries between 60 and 80% positives, depending on when the polls take, and again the Sandinista revolution there. There's a solid base of forces for integration, standing up for sovereignty, pushing against the Monroe Doctrine, and in general, also, as we've discussed, the growing commercial ties, particularly with China. But again, these contradictions. What do you think could come out of a conference where the most anti-imperialist forces are kind of being banned?
Well, absolutely nothing. I mean, if one of their key themes or issues is going to be the issue of human rights, then they need to have front and center the inclusion of the PSUV, the Socialist Party, the United Socialist Party of Venezuela, and also the MAS, the Movement Towards Socialism. Those have been the two most successful projects or political parties that have brought out important policies in their countries in terms of human rights. I don't know what all the numbers are for the different, socialist governments in our region, right. But we're going towards 4 or even 5 million homes built under the Bolivarian Revolution in Venezuela. Surely that's one of the best human rights records in South America. In Bolivia, the human rights indices are through the roof in terms of people getting out of extreme poverty and now being included economically. Those economic rights are what we equate to human rights. And so also talking about the contribution not only to the human rights of their own people, but what their contribution is as parties to the region and multipolarity. So I don't think there's any use of it at all. And so it makes us ask, what are they going to be using this block, this forum, this platform for?
Yeah,
well, I think the answer to that is probably very clear. And it's kind of that what they're trying to do is to set themselves up to maintain a strong relationship with the United States and the European Union. And I think it's relevant in this, in the global context, to talk about, because Sergei Lavrov and Chinese officials have said there is a pluricentric, a multicentric, multipolar world developing, and whose side are you on? And because they aren't saying that. They aren't saying we want you to be on our side, but the United States is. And so this seems to me a kind of a largely empty gesture, as Camilla has said, in that direction. But also, I want to make the point that I think this comes down to something really fundamental in the region, which is, what is public policy for, from the point of view of a revolutionary government, from the point of view of a social democrat government, and obviously, and it's of relevance also for right-wing governments. But from I think what is the difference between the revolutionary governments and all the rest is that their focus is on the needs and aspirations of the human person. And that involves some kind of class-based policies to favor the impoverished majority, who are the class that has historically in Latin America and the Caribbean been exploited. And so what revolutionary governments like those in Venezuela, as Camila's pointed out, in particular in relation to issues like housing or health or education, The revolutionary governments in Cuba, Venezuela, and Nicaragua, for example, have put very strong emphasis on the needs and aspirations of the human person, on the needs and aspirations of the families of the impoverished majority. And this social democrat initiative that Camila has explained to us is doing is shifting that towards a kind of identity politics, and looking very superficially, as Camila has pointed out, at human rights. So they'll talk about civil and political rights, but they'll leave out of their discussions the fundamental rights to health, to education, and so on.
And food and things like that, yeah.
So yeah, and I agree very much with Camila that nothing is likely to come out, certainly nothing substantial is likely to come out of this proposed conference. It's a spoiler. It's something that it will have results in the sense that it'll slow down what you and I, Don, have been talking about for many years. The United States and the European Union and their political allies in the region, among whom we must count now people like Gabriel Boric, for example, and others, they want to slow down the achievement of fundamental rights, of a decent life for the region's impoverished majority, but they are not going to stop that process.
That's right.
All they're going to do, as they've done it over the last 20 years, is slow it down.
That's right. I mean, it's the needs are so urgent and it's so overdue that it is something that's going to happen. I'd like to thank you both for spending some time with us this week, and we'll speak with you again next week.
Thanks for having us, Don.
Thanks very much for inviting me, Don. It's always a pleasure.
My pleasure also. For KPFK, I'm Don DeBar.